a master's degree in Columbia, so she was a very highly qualified teacher. Her principal is Horace Mann Cinder, and when he came in, he just came in as her boss, and he started to introduce IQ testing for the freshmen that would determine their courses. They'd put them into 3 tracks, and that would determine their courses as they go throughout high school. And then he was also an advocate of citizenship training, which was a craze that was that swept the nation's schools during the World Wars. And so it was like this patriotic spirit where they would have like students go up to the blackboard and they would write patriotic quotations, and then they would also like hand out papers that were like advocating for students to buy war saving stamp. So it was this patriotic spirit that was going through the schools. So Cinder, next one. He asked all the teachers to sign this loyalty pledge, and I'm just going to read it out to you guys. It says, "We, the teachers of the public schools of the city of New York, do solemnly pledge our unqualified loyalty to the President and Congress of the United States in this war with the imperial governments of Germany and Austria. We pledge ourselves actively to inculcate in our pupils by word and deed love of flag and an unquestioning loyalty to the military policy of the government and to the measures and principles proclaimed by the President and Congress. We declare ourselves to be in sympathy with the purposes of the government and its efforts to make the world safe for democracy, and believe that our highest duty at this moment is to uphold the hands of the President and Congress in this crisis. We believe that any teacher whose views prevent them from subscribing to such sentiments should not be permitted to teach the youth of our city." So he, the principal, Cinder, he asked all the teachers, all the faculty to sign this pledge. There were hundreds that were reluctant, but when they threatened their jobs, only 30 remained held their stand, and one of those was McDowell, which was one of the highly qualified teachers. And so she was actually suspended with no pay, so he suspended her, and she went on to trial in May 1918, they put her on trial. And it was kind of just the education system trial. And so, just leave it on this one for now. And so they put her on trial, asked her different questions, but she was actually showed that she had a flawless teaching record. So for 13 years, so there was nothing wrong with her teaching. But they kind of pointed out her Quaker beliefs, but she hadn't put that on her students. She was a Quaker, but she hadn't imposed her beliefs on any of her students. And they also asked her a question if she would personally take arms against the resistance to fight, and she said there's other ways than violence. And so her position, her attorney's positions were that the Quakers had really helped the public school systems, and so that they had played a vital role in that. And then also there was a law that was passed that says the right of teachers to not be questioned on their religious beliefs. Anyways, during this time period during the wars, any teacher who had dissident policies that were not following this pledge or anything like that, they were threatened, they were targeted for dismissal, so targeted to be kind of kicked out of their jobs. And so actually, she was in this trial, the teacher, McDowell, she was charged guilty of unbecoming a teacher, and so she was actually fired from her job. So basically during this time, kind of what that all sums up to be is that teachers who had different policies or that were not supportive of their school, like the top, or just not supportive, but just had their own kind of ideas, were basically targeted for dismissal and fired. And so if you didn't sign this loyalty pledge, you were in trouble during this time, basically. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into a little more detail, about how that came to be and what it all is. So on November 18th, the Board of Education was like, okay, we want to do away with any teacher that looks disloyal or doubtful or anything that comes across as red lights or whatever. And so they came up with the orgy of instruction. But what they decided was that 1 week in November every single year, the teachers had to teach about communists and all that stuff and how they're awful, and basically everyone that doesn't go with everything that document said does not go with anything that our country values, and so really degrading that. And since it was such a all about patriotism during that time, those teachers were forced to show that patriotism. And so even there was one case of a librarian who took off some books about the Soviet Union, and she was fired from her job. So certain crazy stuff with their political views, even if what she said, they didn't force it on the children, but if they found out that they didn't believe exactly. They said that they didn't support the military, is what they said. Even though they could be fully supportive of the military and all that stuff, and still not have the same political views. So that was a big problem. William Randolph was a great person in this time. He really supported with teachers' salaries and how they needed to be increased and how the importance of them, and so that was really awesome. And then Howard Beale, he was the one that introduced the orgy of instruction, which is where if the teacher does not go with certain political views, then they should be fired. And so that librarian and stuff. And so they ended up creating 2 camps. And one camp was similar to today, which was about social democratic and supporters of school funding, and the second camp is not realistic to today's or whatever, and it's about communists and all that stuff. And so also during this time, during the 1930s to the 1950s, even during the Depression, there was a huge oversupply of teachers. They started, a lot of students started going for their masters and doctorates that wanted to be teachers, and so it came about that they were oh my goodness, all these people that just got, their bachelor's degree and stuff, they weren't getting hired. So it was definitely an oversupply. There were jobs that were needed during the Depression. So that was definitely a problem. Even though you go to college doesn't mean that you have a job, especially in that time.
So I'm going to be talking about Irving and Ruth Alder. They were a couple that were married during this time, and they were 2 victims of the witch hunts going on in this time period. So Irving was a city college math major, and he considered himself a socialist. So him and his wife Ruth both had to go to city college during this time because the Ivy League schools did not accept people like them. So a little bit about Ruth. She was the daughter of a Jewish farmer, so she was considered Jewish during this time period, and she considered herself more radical than her husband, and even introduced him to communism. They both trained to become public school teachers, which is why they went to the city college, even though they couldn't get into the Ivy League schools. And after experiencing both employment discrimination, they joined the Communist Party and the Teachers Union in New York City, which I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later, about what the Teachers Union did. But Ruth especially experienced employment discrimination because of her gender. She was a female during this time period, and males were more common to become teachers. And she also experienced discrimination because she was a Jew. But they finally hired both of them as permanent substitutes, which is better than not having a job at all, but they did not receive the highest wages that normal teachers were receiving, and they did not get paid sick days off. So a little bit about the teachers union that they joined. The public school teachers worried that unionism had a blue collar stain that would hurt a teacher's reputation during these interwar years. And 3 major things that the teachers union did. It was called the 3-pronged civil rights agenda. So the first thing they fought for was rigorous curriculum at schools that served poor children. So the teachers union was really focused on serving the poor black community especially, and they really wanted them to be getting the same education that all the other schools during this time period were getting. They also wanted to remove racist textbooks from all the schools, not just the poor black schools, but all the schools in this area. And they partnered with community organizations to improve social conditions. And another major thing that the teachers union advocated for was smaller class sizes. So during this time period, the class sizes could be somewhere to 50 people and up, because they just didn't have many teachers that wanted to go to these poverty-stricken schools. So they really advocated, especially focusing on the black community, to have at least 20 people and under in each class sizes. So.
Okay. Sorry. Earl Browder during this time was a really big person for the time. He led the American Communist movement, and participated in Soviet espionage. He was relative moderate, but he thought that communism could fit into the democratic tradition, which doesn't really make sense to me, but for him, he did. And then during World War II, he wanted to cool hostilities between communists and socialists. He did a lot of things, but it was all communist-based. So, really, yeah. But led American communists to support the New Deal, and he also was part of the vision of the Communist Party and attracted public school teachers to it. Where's my? Sorry, guys. Where did you go? That one? Okay. Sorry. Also, during this time, there were a lot of purges going on. And what that was it's not like the movie The Purge that's out now. No, they were purging the public school system of communist teachers. So like McCarthyism and all that. What would happen would be a teacher would be going about their life, they'd get a notice saying, hey, you need to come to Superintendent William Jameson's room, okay? So they would go there, he would basically ask, were you ever a part of a communist party, or are you still? If they said yes, they would be removed from the school. If they said no, they would be put on trial. But when they were put on trial, they were made to want to quit. The social media would blast their name all over the place, and they basically would not have a job to go back to, even if they were not convicted of what they had done. And then one of the most notorious trials was September to October in 1950, and that had to do with 8 Jewish members of the teacher union, and they all got charged with insubordination and conduct unbecoming of a teacher. And what happened during that trial was that one person in particular, if I can find her name. What? Yeah, Bella Dodd. Sorry. Bella Dodd, she was, it's not her name. Oops. Sorry, guys. Bella Dodd, she was, or no, Alice, it was Alice, not Bella Dodd. Yeah, okay. Alice Citron had 15 parents speak for her, and everyone thought that she would get forgiven and all, and that it would be fine. But even the prosecutor, John McGrath, freely admitted to not having proof, but she still got fired and all for everything she'd done. So even when people were like, no, they didn't have anything to do with it, and they were such great teachers, she'd been a teacher for years, they still got disowned and didn't have jobs. So it was just a big thing.
So the TEU, the Teachers Union, disbanded in 1964 because of the purge teachers, and they were never able to recover. So instead, the United Federation of Teachers came about, and they were social democratic teacher guys, and they did support higher salaries, smaller class sizes, better curriculum, and they replaced the Teachers Union. And to just wrap it up, at the end of the era of this purging and the witch hunt, the communist purge, it sent a very powerful message to the teachers. Even though you were a good educator, it didn't mean you were welcomed in the classroom. And it also brought about cultural role. It also brought about higher expectations for academics, for students of color, and radical teacher ideals would become mainstream in school reform priorities.
Okay, yay! Now we're gonna ask you questions and you get candy! yay.
That's what I'm talking about.
What was the name of the agreement Snyder asked every faculty member, including McDowell, to sign that circulated throughout the New York City school system?
It had something to do with the Constitution. It said something Constitution.
I don't know the answer, so.
Anybody know? It's not that.
That was
It's not like
the law. The law pledge.
The loyal.
The
Loyalty
teacher's
pledge.
I said it first.
No, you didn't.
No.
Thanks. Yay! What was the main pledge of allegiance? What was the main purpose of the teacher union?
The main
In other
purpose of
words,
the
what was
teacher-
the one thing the union advocated for?
Equality for teachers.
Is that right?
Really vague.
That was good. Indeed.
Yay! 4 more chances. In a certain week in November, what were the teachers asked to teach about?
Communism.
Danny, yeah, you.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that. Okay, thank you.
What was the
what's
area of
your score?
investigation?
That's when the superintendent would pull teachers or staff members in their office, and if the person said yes, then they would be put on trial. And if they went to trial, they were pretty much put into a corner so that they wouldn't want to even teach anyways. And if they said no, then they'd be fired. Or it's the other way around. It's the other way around. It's the same difference. You know what I'm
You
saying?
guys already both won.
Okay.
Answer that.
He literally took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. In what year did the teacher union disband?
1949.
Oh my God.
54. 54.
1944.
49 or 54. One of those.
It was.
Hey, you're just reading like 68. I'll take it.
64. 64.
63.
64.
66.
What's the answer?
It's 64.
Okay.
Oh, boy, take that.
Okay,
Big money. Y'all
Sam,
show
don't
up.
answer.
Thank you.
Y'all show
How did
up.
the purges affect a teacher's life?
They got fired, or they could have been put on trial for the rest of their lives. Like, no one liked them anymore, so their lives were ruined.
It increased academics.
Sam, no.
No, seriously.
Yay!
No, she gave that answer at the end. It increased academic standards for
You were
low
told
income
not to
students.
answer. I'm gonna give it
or
to her.
increased.
Thank you.
Just
Yay!
That was the answer.
I'm still getting my kisses.
I was listening.